and also other Hezbollah infrastructure, the Israeli military says.
Yolande Nell and Hugo Pachega. Well, let's speak now to Yonah Bob, author and senior military correspondent of the Jerusalem Post. Thank you very much for joining us on BBC News today. And first of all, do you think it's any coincidence that we've seen, as the Israeli army has just said, attacks on 30 targets in Lebanon on the very day that the Israeli government, the cabinet, is meeting to decide whether to agree this 60-day pause?
Wants to put as much pressure on Hezbollah as possible. It wants to, produce this as a scene of victory. And it's not the same as what's happened in Gaza, right? In Gaza, Israel really beat all of Hamas's military, units, not politically, but all the military. And that's not what's happening in Lebanon. Israel has beat a lot of Hezbollah, but Hezbollah is going to remain in control of Lebanon. So how does Israel present this to the public? It looks very good for Israel to be hitting, Hezbollah in Beirut, to have its soldiers at the Litani River. All of this is how Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu would like to present this narrative going forward.
And let's dig into a little bit more why the Israeli cabinet is looking like it's going to agree this deal now. We're told that Benjamin Netanyahu has agreed to it in principle. There may be some dissent within the cabinet, but it looks almost like it's a done deal. So why now?
Yeah, I think there is going to be a deal, and I think it's going to be soon. Again, it could even be today. And why now? Because Israel has done sort of what it can do, right? Nobody in Israel, certainly not Netanyahu, wants to occupy all of Lebanon, do like a really large war. The goal of fighting Hezbollah from the beginning was basically to clear its Radwan special forces out of the southern Lebanon area up to the Litani so that they couldn't invade northern Israel, the way that Hamas invaded southern Israel October 7, 2023, to eliminate not all, but most of Hezbollah's large rockets, right? Hezbollah still has tens of thousands of small rockets that it can fire on the north. But to eliminate a lot of that, remove Hassan Nasrallah. He was the chief for over 30 years. People thought in Israel that he would not agree to this kind of a ceasefire, which allows Israel to continue the war in Gaza. So all of those elements have been achieved. If you can't achieve more, then you call it a day, sign a deal, and move on.
Do you think, though, in practice, this sort of buffer zone south of the Litani River is going to hold? What do you see the Lebanese military doing? What do you see the role of the international forces being?
I'm going to be very frank. The Lebanese military is much weaker than Hezbollah. UNIFIL, the international forces, much weaker than Hezbollah. They did try briefly in 2006, that was like the second Lebanon war, to enforce this idea that Hezbollah can't be in southern Lebanon. They're not capable of doing that. The difference this time is Israel has more leverage. Israel has defeated Hezbollah much more seriously this time than it did in 2006, and so it has a side letter from the United States saying, if Hezbollah violates the resolution, you do not need to go to the International Committee in certain circumstances. You can bomb them, attack them without going to the committee. The committee will be for if Hezbollah is building some sort of tunnel or long-term manufacturing complex. But if you see Hezbollah Radwan crossing over the Litani, I think Israel will attack them without asking permission because it has side permission already from the United States.
So we're talking about these discussions around Lebanon. Meanwhile, give us the update on those discussions around the situation in Gaza. Much less progress there, clearly.
Look, there are no negotiations in Gaza. There have been no negotiations basically since sometime in the summer. Certainly since Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas, was killed in mid-October, there have been no negotiations. Basically, Israel hoped that when it killed Sinwar, that the remaining Hamas members, very few of its original leadership is left, but the remaining leadership would say, they would like to live and they'll be expelled and Israel can do it at once, in Gaza and establish a new government, whatever, with the Palestinian Authority or with, the UAE, Egypt, whatever it is. Hamas isn't saying that. And Hamas has 50 live hostages, another 50, hostages' bodies. And so Israel is going to have to decide either to let those people die or to cut a deal, which will lead eventually to a withdrawal from Gaza. Right now, Netanyahu has not said he's calling it time. I think he wants to see if this deal will put more pressure on Hamas, and maybe also if Trump coming into office in the United States will put more pressure on Hamas.
Yonah Bob from the Jerusalem Post, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.